The fourth point I want to make here, and that's something which Graham alluded to in his introductory remarks. Many of you will say, but we've seen this all before. This is not new. The Commission has been talking about these issues for the last 10 years, the last 20 years. SME financing keeps popping up. We have the Giovanni report from 10 or 15 years ago now, and still you come back on the same issues. I think there is absolutely no intention from our side to try to repackage things and pretend that all of a sudden, a new Commission, we have reinvented the wheel, we have found a lot of new issues. Obviously, the questions we are looking at here are very complex. There has been a lot of good and important work going into these matters already, notably last year with the Commission's communication on long-term financing, which also already touched on some of the issues which are very much in the focus also of the Capital Market Union. I don't think that's a contradiction. I think that's very logical that, of course, we need to continue and take work forward, continue those work streams which have usefully already been looked at earlier. So I think having this continuation here and at the same time trying to take a fresh look on some of these matters is something which is very legitimate and a sensible way forward. Fifth point here, it's not all about legislation. You will have seen in the Green Paper that it's, if you wish, dark green when it comes to matters like sectorization and a review of the Prospectus Directive. This is something which we announced already in the Investment Plan for Europe that we are going to look at with priority. We think these are important matters where we need to take action. Clearly also, if we want to change the rules on prospectuses, there is a directive with implementing regulations in place. If we want to change that, we need legislation. We cannot do it otherwise. However, that is not to say that we need legislation for every single issue which is raised in the CMU. As Graham mentioned, we already have a big file of financial regulation. We don't necessarily need to add to that. So the approach of Lord Hill is very much to look at the different areas and see, yes, sometimes legislation is the only answer. Sometimes we can work more with market-based solutions. Sometimes there are market practices in certain member states that one can usefully look at in other countries. So this is our approach is very much to say, let's look at the different issues and then decide, depending on the circumstances, what is the right way forward for this particular matter. Finally, my sixth point in this context is some of the very complex issues here, and Graham mentioned them, solvency law, tax law, securities law, company law, again, issues where you would argue the Commission has tried so many times already to do something fundamental here, and you may feel that we have not always been as successful as we may have wished. I think there are two points to be made here. First of all, I think we are now at a bit of a different juncture. I think there is a certain momentum around making our capital markets work, which I think we should seize. What I mean with that is that maybe opposition, which was there 5 years ago or 2 years ago or 10 years ago, is not necessarily as strong today as it may have been earlier. That being said, we certainly shouldn't fool ourselves. We need to here very much find the right balance between what may be kind of political idealism and what is an ambition, and what we can realistically achieve in a relatively short time frame over the next couple of years. And as you may have seen in the Green Paper, this is reflected in the sense that we say for several of these rather difficult and complex areas where we know that we go into the core of member states' civil law and contract law and what have you, that maybe there is an argument to be made that let's try to identify, and then there the Commission is very much in the hands of stakeholders like yourselves, let's try to identify whether there are some particular issues that are particularly burdensome and particularly problematic. So let's not say that, yes, we need one European insolvency law because we know we won't get there. Let's instead say, are there 1, 2, 3, 4 elements in the insolvency framework kind of context where we think these are the real problematic points. Let's try to address those at the European level, and then, of course, accept the fact that we won't be able to maybe reach the kind of ideal scenario that we would have liked to see. So that's very much our approach here, trying to be ambitious and realistic at the same time. Very much, of course, in your hands. Looking forward to your useful and I hope pragmatic and still ambitious contributions to our green paper. The consultation period runs until the beginning of May, as you know. Of course, we are at the beginning of the debate, and this is certainly not the last word being said in this context. And for my part, I'm certainly very much looking forward to continue this very important discussion with all of you. I can unfortunately not stay for the panels, which I think with the distinguished speakers lined up will be extremely interesting and extremely rewarding for the exchange of views. I would have time for a couple of questions, though, so I will stop here and thank you again and have a very successful day.
So Paulina has kindly agreed to take some questions. So can I see hands? And when you ask a question, please say who you are and push the red button over there. Right.
Hello, it's Howard Miller from Citibank. Can I just check it's Chatham House Rule?
No, this is on camera.
Okay. Fine, good to know. I just wondered what the interaction of the CMU is with the existing kind of legislative program, because I noted like some of the questions relate to issues which are kind of covered by MiFID II, etc. Any thoughts on that would be interesting.
Should I take? Well,
yes, we take two or
maybe
three.
two, yeah, and then I'll.
Any microphone? Red button.
Charlotte Bellamy, ICMA. Is that better? Yeah. It's a related question to the question before. The Prospectus Directive is, of course, identified as an area for early priorities, but some of the changes that might make, I suppose, a real difference in terms of reducing burdens under the Prospectus Directive may also need to then be looked at in the context of other areas of regulation that could perhaps then bolster investor protection in other areas. So is there a sense that other areas of regulation will be looked at holistically, or is it just PD on its own and then other areas will be looked at second, or what's the thinking on that?
Actually, can I ask the last question then? While I have the opportunity. This question of getting individual national administrations to do withholding tax and that sort of thing. I noticed the idea of using country-specific recommendations to get the countries to do as they're requested. And that's a great idea. Are you really going to be able to push that forward to name and shame which states are holding back, which are not doing the recommended changes to their insolvency law, and really point out where the problems are? You've identified them, who's not doing it, and really get them to change. So, is that...
Thanks so much for the questions. I think the two first questions indeed are a bit related. How does this interrelate to, first of all, other ongoing legislative processes, and of course also more globally other areas which may be relevant in this context? Our approach to CMU is clearly, as you see in the Green Paper, it is very holistic. We kind of appreciate that it's not a matter of just one article in one law. We need to take a much broader approach than that. In terms of follow-up and the MiFID question, as we are taking this forward, it's, I think, very natural that you then also look in parallel to what's going on already in level 2 in particular, to make sure that that the right hand knows what the left hand is doing. So we're not trying to change one thing here, and at the same time we're introducing an obstacle on the other side. So I think this is something that we are going to be very mindful about. As you know, when it comes to level 2 things, Commission has a last say, so we get the input from ESMA in particular, but it's of course us in the end deciding what we actually do. More generally, when it comes to how do different things interact, what is the cumulative impact, that's something Lord Hill has been very clear on, that he is interested in kind of looking into what he usually refers to as unintended consequences. The fact that there has been so much legislation being put in place during the last couple of years for very legitimate and very good reasons is of course also clear that there may be certain elements that maybe work in a way which was not entirely intended, and that's something we need to bear in mind. And for me, that is kind of also part of the CMU process, in the sense that what do we need to do to make capital markets work better, also bearing in mind the rules that we have already in place, of course, and rules that are in the process of being put into place. But that's also very much something where we would need your input. You may sometimes be better placed than we are to actually see where does things on the ground contradict each other, or where are the real problems here. So I think the point you both make is very well taken, and certainly something which we would be interested in terms of feedback to the Green Paper, saying, fine, yes, please change the prospectus directive, but bear in mind then that you then also should look at other areas, as for example, data protection. So I think we are very much in the kind of spirit of what you suggested here, but we need your help and input also as far as this matter is concerned. On the issue to what extent you can use the European semester, I think that is, of course, something that one needs to look at. It's, of course, also true that there are limits to how many country-specific recommendations we can make per member state and on what issues. So we need to be a little bit selective here to make sure that we actually focus on the things that are the most important in each individual member state. That being said, though, I think our approach is very clearly in the kind of new context that we also use the semester process and the tools we have there to look at issues which are relevant for the well-functioning of the internal market in general, and the Capital Market Union, of course, very clearly part of that. So I think we are not at all far away from what you are suggesting, Graham, but I think we need to be a little bit realistic in terms of how, what we need to prioritize on for the different member states in the context of the semester.
Excellent.